welcome everybody to our July occupational safety meeting, and the first one of, I guess, technical one of this new year with the BWC. This is being recorded. Everyone is on mute. I'm Christy Durich, the executive director here at the Safety Council. And this year with the BWC, it's going to be virtual again. We will offer 8 meetings. BWC will offer 2 that will be statewide. I will be sending out the schedule here in the next couple weeks to let you know about that. But we got one more year virtual, so appreciate the ones that are logging on here, and we hope to make it of value to you for sure. We will continue our door prizes, a $25 gift card to Amazon each week. And Ben will always be here. Who doesn't like a Ben sighting once a month? I told him I missed him. I didn't see him in June. So Ben, what do you have for us?
Okay, well, welcome everybody back. Got some distance learning to talk about. We're still going to, because we still are doing virtual stuff, we are offering webinars. I don't know if you can see that or not. Hopefully you can. On August 10th, they will be doing a 1-hour webinar, and I believe they're live. So I think that they are credited for ISSP, I believe, or you will get credited for it. You'll get CEUs, in other words. Engaging millennials in safety, really a hot topic. One of the things at August 10th. We're going to be doing on August 11th, advice for creating a successful safety and health management program. We are offering also, on the 12th, there's 7 habits of highly effective safety teams. We got transitional work on the 24th. So you can see that they're starting to offer a little bit more on those. We also have some virtual classes that are up and coming. One is Lockout Tagout on August 4th. These have been going pretty well. I've been instructing a few of these. We've been ranging around 50 to 60 people in the classes, so we do have a good attendance. Even though it's virtually, it's done pretty well. I will tell you that all of the BWC training classes this year, starting obviously in June, ending in or July rather, and ending in June, will be virtual. So we will not be offering any classes at our training center for now with the program. So traffic control is on August 18th. Confined space assessment and work is a 2-day class. We are taking the 8-hour classes and breaking them into 4-hour increments. When I do my refresher class, my hazmat class, my HazWhopper, we were the first ones to do that, where we offered it in 2 4-hour increments, just because it's just too hard to sit there for 8 hours and try to participate, try to, stay awake even. So we're doing them in 4-hour increments. So any of the 8-hour classes that we were offering will be offered as a 2-day class. So half-day classes. Electrical safety, and then in September there'll be a full range of classes that we'll be offering. So most of the classes that you saw in the catalog will be offered virtually throughout the year. So look for those, and then you get your credit also. So that is an ISSP credit if you're part of that program. So we've also got some online e-courses. It's like Safety Culture, OSHA Record Keeping 101, Bloodborne Path, and they usually range from 30 minutes to upwards to 2 hours, depending on what the topic is. So other than that, I want to say welcome everyone, because this is the 21-22 year. And thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Ben. Anytime you guys have questions, Ben's the guy we can ask. And anytime you have a question or comment, just type it in the chat. Ben's going to be looking at that and he'll respond. So don't forget about the chat box. And I am happy to introduce our speaker today, Dave Rice. He is the founder and principal consultant at Rubicon EHS, which stands for Environmental Health and Safety. He has more than 17 years of experience in the environmental health and safety consulting, management, and oversight. And in 2021, he pulled the trigger. He founded Rubicon EHS, which I'm sure was a little gut wrenching to take a leap of faith, but it sounds like things are going good. And today he's going to talk about how we can reduce our footprint and reduce waste, hopefully at home and at work. But he's got a lot of experience assisting in a variety of industrial clients and handling their regulatory compliance responsibilities. So if you have questions, type them in the chat. And you now have the floor, Dave Rice. Thanks.
Thank you. So bear with me while I share my screen. Okay, so let me check this. So yeah, my name is Dave Rice, and I'm, as Christy said, the founder and principal consultant for Rubicon EHS. As she said, I just recently started this company in January of this year, but I do have, at this point in time, over 17 years of experience doing environmental health and safety, regulatory compliance type work. My first job as a professional was really as a field health and safety coordinator for a heavy highway construction company. But that also involved, doing inspections, doing training, doing some inspections on mines. So I got some MSHA experience as well. It was a really good starting point. And then when I moved to Columbus, bounced around, did some surveying, some other things, material testing, and then ended up being a consultant for the better part of the last 16 years. And then, as I said, I recently started this company, and I founded this company based on providing rational, objective EHS solutions to meet the challenges of ever-changing regulatory environment. Our operating philosophy is really based on three core virtues: rationality, independent thinking, and integrity. These guiding virtues ensure that we provide practical, compliance-focused solutions tailored to our clients' needs and goals, help them identify any potential risks as well as opportunities, and honor the commitments that we make to our clients, contractors, and employees. Now, today I'm going to be speaking on waste reduction programs, where to begin, how to get buy-in, some strategies and case studies from my own personal experience, but also some more well-publicized experiences that hopefully you can take some of these ideas and strategies and maybe implement them at your own facility. All right, so what we're going to, our agenda for today is really what is a waste reduction program? Where do we begin? How do we get those buy-in? What's our strategies? And again, like I said, some case studies on how to develop, implement, and then maintain a successful waste reduction program. But first, we have a quiz. So in 2018, the total municipal solid waste generated in the United States was 292.4 million tons. Now, which waste stream do you believe represents the largest percentage of that amount? Paper and paperboard, plastics, food, or yard trimmings? If you want to put the answer in the chat, I think I will be able to see that. All right, so we have a couple answers. All right, so the answer is A, paper and paperboard, and that represents 23.5% of that total tonnage. Food was a pretty close second at 21.59%. what I probably would have anticipated would have been in plastics. And that came in at 12.2%, and yard waste came in at 12.11%. So a couple of you got that right, a couple of you didn't, but that's good, that's okay. All right, moving on. So what is a waste reduction program? According to the US EPA, waste reduction is described as a source reduction and or environmentally sound recycling methods prior to implementing energy recovery, treatment, or disposal options. This refers to the use of source reduction and environmentally sound recycling methods prior to sending them off to another location for some sort of disposal or management. Generally, it doesn't include waste treatment, meaning that any change to the physical, chemical, or biological composition of the waste stream itself. Now, it's important to remember that waste is not just trash. When we're talking about waste in regards to this presentation and really at a broad scale, we want to make sure that we also want to think about energy use and inefficiencies there, wastewater, air emissions, labor, and then there's a whole bunch of other things that we can consider and lump into this waste management program or waste reduction program, particularly if you're looking to take a more holistic approach in regards to sustainability initiatives or ESG programs and initiatives there. Right. Now, what are some of the benefits of having a waste reduction program? Now, obviously, we'll talk a little bit more in depth about these, but there's production efficiencies and quality can increase. We can reform a brand image if that has been damaged. And we all know how important brand image is in today's age. Economics. Obviously, if we're not wasting energy, labor, materials, that impacts our facility's bottom line, which can obviously improve the overall corporation's bottom line. Can attract new customers. It can reduce our environmental impacts, which is something obviously there's been a lot of attention drawn to over the last couple of years. And it can provide a competitive advantage, which we'll talk about a little bit later in some of those case studies. So how can it reduce or improve our production efficiency and quality? By understanding the amount and types of waste that our organization generates, you're better positioned to find ways to eliminate or minimize this waste. Less waste equals less management of waste, which then can lead to an increase in profit, both real and intangible. Now, those loss reductions can also manifest through mechanisms such as Lean, 5S, Kaizen, Kanban, Six Sigma. Improving production efficiency and quality can lead to better overall economics for that facility and the company at large. And what about brand image? With increasing focus on environmental, social governance, or ESG, environmental justice issues, stakeholder capitalism and engagement, having a proactive waste management and reduction strategy can really improve your brand's value and boost your company's overall public image. We can all, if I say, what's a company that has a positive brand image, there are certain things that trigger that response in you. It could be that you had a good experience with that company. It could be that you really like their product, or it could be that you feel that they are a responsible company, whatever that means to you, or that they're doing good for the environment. Again, whatever that means to you. So having a robust, a publicized waste reduction strategy program can really help with that brand image. Again, managing those waste, water, energy issues, they're core components of having a solid sustainability program or initiative. And improving that, your organization's sustainability, again, can boost that corporate image, can attract more and more quality customers, and positively engage your employees. Economics, that's really what it all comes down to for most people. An efficient facility that turns out a consistently good quality product, has a good public image, are bound to have positive economic outcomes. Increasing recyclability can reduce your overall waste disposal costs. And products that are viewed more favorably can, in some markets, be sold at higher costs, as more consumers these days are willing to purchase premium or earth-friendly products. Now, we all know when we go shopping, if we're prone to look for those types of products, whether it be an organic product or a GMO-free product, or products that are made from recycled materials, typically you pay a little bit more for those products. And if you're willing to do that, that's that premium. So if you're able to capitalize on your waste reduction strategies and then turn that into a marketing strategy to be maybe somewhat cold about it, that can obviously have positive economic benefits to your company. You can also attract new customers. Like I said earlier, customers will search out for those companies and brands and products that they feel are better for, or improving, or at least having a reduced impact on the environment. The rise of ESG initiatives and reporting, the fact that it's becoming mandated by larger corporations down the supply chain, environmental justice issues, stakeholder engagement. These are all critical things that can work to your favor and bring in those new customers. As I said, ESG is increasingly becoming something that is, to some degree, it is becoming more and more of a requirement from a larger company down through its supply chain, because Walmart or Toyota or GM, IKEA, they don't want to deal with the bad PR of one of their suppliers using slave labor, for example, or having a bad reputation of disposing of their waste into the ocean. So those larger corporations are then pushing down requirements, and they're investigating those companies to make sure that they are following proper procedures and waste management strategies, and doing their best to work on environmental engagement and improvement, because that's ultimately a larger part of that larger corporation's brand image. We also, one of the benefits is reducing our facilities or our company's environmental impact. Tracking our waste management activities in one platform and using a standard set of metrics makes it easier to share and report information with stakeholders. Reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, waste prevention and recycling offer significant potential for reducing a facility's greenhouse gas emissions, both Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. It conserves resources. Reusing and recycling conserves those natural resources, including trees, metals, and water. If you're in the electronics industry, you're probably acutely aware of the increasing focus on scarcity of rare earth metals that we need for all the technology that we now completely rely on. And so if we can find ways to maximize the use of those materials, reduce the need for virgin materials like that, then that's obviously a good thing and contributes to the sustainability of our product. Tools such as the US EPA's Energy Star portfolio is one of those mechanisms that we can use to track our energy use and reduction efforts. So there are tools out there that we can use as part of our waste reduction programs. Again, competitive advantage. You're performing more efficiently and you're able to get your product out the door faster at higher quality. That's going to improve your company's finances. You're reducing your risk by reducing your potential environmental liability and regulatory burden. Now listen, I'm an environmental consultant. My job is literally to go tell companies what they're required to do per government regulations. I am not a fan of a lot of government regulations. I don't think a lot of them make a whole heck of a lot of sense. So, but that's irrelevant. We all have rules that we have to follow in order to operate. So if we can implement some small or maybe not even small strategies, but if we can implement some strategies that reduce our waste burden, say maybe that takes us from a large quantity generator of hazardous waste down to a small or even very small quantity generator. You know, reducing that regulatory burden makes my life as an EHS manager a whole lot easier, because I'm not now paying for all that waste disposal, which I'm paying a premium, particularly if we're talking about hazardous waste. I'm not paying for the management of the waste. I'm not paying for the hauling of the waste. So, you know, all these little improvements can really ease some of that regulatory burden and make your life a lot easier, make your facility life a lot easier. We also, you know, foster innovation. You know, having that competitive advantage of having a new innovation, because at some point in time, all the low-hanging fruit will be gone. You'll be forced to deal with the question of, how do I get rid of all this shrink wrap? You know, it's a low-quality material. Recyclers don't want it. It all just has to go in the trash. Somebody's got to be able to figure out, you know, somebody's got a billion-dollar idea out there about how to manage shrink wrap without sending it to landfill. So, you know, sometimes one of the things we'll talk about is, as far as promoting this with internally, or some of the strategies, is, you know, have a contest within your facility and say, hey, we have X amount of shrink wrap. We'd like to not send it to landfill. Let's have a contest to figure out if anyone has any good ideas on how to implement that. Okay, so how much does the U.S. recycle? Now, in 2018, 69 million tons of materials were recycled. Of that material, what material do you think represents the smallest percentage of that total? Again, you can put your answer in the chat. All right, got a couple answers. Anyone else want to chime in? Okay. Got a pretty good mix there. So I did try to trick you, I guess, because I did ask, what do you think represents the smallest percentage? And that is actually glass at 4.43%, followed by plastic, which is 4.47%. Rubber and textiles was at 6%. Metals was at 12%. And paper and cardboard obviously represents the material that gets recycled the most, and that was at 66.5%. One of the things that I've been more aware of lately, as regards to recycling, is Rumpke on their Twitter feed. Obviously, Rumpke is my recycling service. On their Twitter feed, they have started to put you know, infographics or pictures or you know, information about things that can be recycled and things that cannot be recycled. And there are a lot of things that we tend to think can be recycled that really can't be. Prime example of that would be your pizza boxes, right? The cardboard, between cardboard, we want to recycle cardboard. I just told you that the paper and paperboard is the material that gets recycled the most, and it's partly right. So what you can recycle is everything except the bottom part of the pizza box where that pizza actually sat. And yes, someone chimed in because of the food contamination, the oils degrade, the oils from the food degrade that material. So, you know, whether you know it or not, recycling is all commodity based and market based. If there's no money in it, it ain't getting recycled. So so putting those pizza boxes with the food contamination, the oils, that pulp gets degraded, therefore it has less value. So there's a lot of good information out there for your recycling programs. And it's something, you know, as Christy said, some of these things you can kind of take away for your own personal use. And this is something This is obviously a conversation I have with my family a lot, because I went from, all right, we need to start recycling, all these different things. We have the bins, we don't have to separate them out, but now we need to start, okay, we need to evaluate, is this something we can recycle? Like the red bins are not just a secondary trash can. It's kind of the phase of the Rubicon World headquarters here. Okay, so now let's talk about some strategies as far as implementing a waste reduction program. Where I would start, where I recommend everyone start, is conducting a waste assessment. And a waste assessment, or an audit, is a systematic review of your building and its operations to identify the quantity, composition of materials in your waste stream. They provide opportunities to look for ways to reduce, reuse, and donate waste materials. They also give you a chance to evaluate any waste reduction practices and the effectiveness of those practices that you already have in place. So we first want to focus on waste prevention methods or measures, which will then help eliminate the waste at the generating source, saving resources and energy and cutting costs. Then we move to evaluating the recyclability and composting options that we might have to manage that waste that can't be eliminated. But we want to make sure that whatever reduction or minimization activities we have, that we implement, we want to make sure that they're right for our facility and for our personnel. You may want to start off small, start off with 1 or 2 clear, sort of easy goals or objectives, just to get the program rolling, get some easy wins, get that employee buy-in and engagement. And then you can start ramping up to the next level, or expanding from one area to another area. And it's also important when you do these assessments and program implementation, don't be afraid, don't be too rigid. Don't be afraid to make changes on the fly, because if things aren't working, change it up, right? Find something that does work for your facility. So after you get those wins, then you can start rolling out the other initiatives. Like I said, they expand the scope of the waste reduction or the recycling program, expand, the types of materials we're going to bring in, all those different things. If you start slow, just like anything else, you start building that habit, start making it part of the routine, and people aren't thinking about it as much. It just becomes, oh, this is where, I put the paper in the recycle bin, I don't put it in the trash bin. I do these things. So it just becomes habit, and it allows you to gain momentum for your program as a whole. Now, the scope of your waste assessment is going to depend on your facility's size and complexity, as well as the type of the waste generated, but it's also going to be driven by the resources you have available to you. And that includes money, time, and labor. So make sure you set your goals and expectations appropriate for your facility and for what you're really trying to do. Again, it's not a bad idea to just start small, get those easy wins, get the habits of forming, and then you can start slowly expanding and rolling out new initiatives. Now, when we do a waste assessment, there's 3 approaches that you can take. A records review, a facility walkthrough, and waste sorting, or doing what I call a dumpster dive. My preference and what I feel is the best strategy is you really incorporate all 3 of these components into your assessment. But we'll start with the records review. So when you conduct a records review, we want to look at things like purchasing records, inventory, maintenance and operating logs for equipment and raw materials. These documents will give us insight into the types of materials that we're bringing into our facility. Once we know what materials we're bringing into the facility, then we can look at how they arrive and what types of waste are generated once they're in, from those materials, once they're into our facility, once they're into our process. And obviously, the sort of low-hanging fruit on that side of things would be the packaging material. However, we can also look at, this exercise gives us an opportunity to look at things like the delivery frequencies. We may identify some inefficiencies there, such as, instead of receiving a partial shipment twice a week, can we receive just one full shipment at the end of the week? That could potentially reduce packaging waste, labor costs with managing and moving around 2 shipments as opposed to just 1. And then the more obvious one would be vehicle emissions. 1 truck making deliveries versus 2 trucks making deliveries, are going to cut those emission levels. So then we can look at our waste hauling and disposal records, see what types of waste we're sending, as well as this also allows us to quantify the volume of waste that we're sending, as well as the cost. And as I said, cost is that's a really good tool to leverage upper management to either get support for your program or to not get their support. Because if you can show that you're going to save them some money by implementing some easy, small strategies, it's going to be a whole lot easier sell than saying something that's going to cost more with no real benefit. Then finally, we look at what are we recycling, if anything, and then we look at any revenue or returns that we get on that program. As I said, this is just one method we can use for our waste assessment, but it doesn't really provide any waste specific data. It's not going to give us insight into how that waste is being generated or why it's being generated. And so for that, then we really can go to our facility walkthrough. Just walking through a facility with a waste identification mindset can give you a better sense of the types of waste that are being generated, where they're being generated, and how they're being generated. And not only doing a site walkthrough can do all this, but when you do that site walkthrough, can also give you even more insight. Because you may generate a certain type or certain volume of waste on first shift that doesn't get generated on third shift, or vice versa. Foundries, typically electric arc furnaces, typically operate in the middle of the night. They don't operate during the day because of the economics. The electricity is more available and cheaper in the evening. So a facility that operates primarily in the evening, third shift, if you look, they're going to generate different waste than that first shift is, because they're doing different things. So not only are you going to walk around, you want to walk around at different times, times of day, times of year, because depending on your operations and your product, you can be generating different waste streams throughout the year. As you go through this, you want to make sure that you're stopping at each step of the process and seeing what are the waste being generated. Again, what's going in and what's coming out, and you do that all the way through the process. Identify where those wastes are being generated and identify how they're being generated. Then look for, you can look for inefficiencies in the process itself, such as how the materials move through the process or the facility. Look at the facility's layout, where materials stored, how are they moved through the facility? How is the waste moved? How is that waste then moved and stored? This may not only identify some waste and material handling efforts, but it may also identify some safety hazards that could potentially be eliminated. Make sure you also look at any existing waste reduction efforts that you have in place and assess if they're really working or not. Why is there an empty recycling bin in one spot and a trash bin overflowing with those recyclable materials in another? Talk to those operators, talk to the people in that area, and ask, why is the trash bin always full of things that you can recycle when there's a recycling bin? It may be as simple as, well, it's just inconvenient, or it's not, to walk over that to where the recycling bin is. It's much more convenient and easy to put, where the waste bin is. So, all right, can we just flip-flop, or can we put the recycle bin next to the waste bin? Sometimes, do that walk around and sometimes reveal those easy things that we can do to really make a fairly substantial difference. You also have to kind of talk and say, all right, people may not know what they can recycle. As I said, Rumpke is doing a lot of education right now about what you can recycle and what you can't recycle. So have those conversations. Make sure people know. Use signs. I'll talk about it later on, but when I was really sort of spearheading a waste reduction strategy or program at a facility, there was included visual signs. You know, not everyone, some people are visual learners and some people are, you know, learn by reading. So if we say, put up a sign that says recycle, you know, you can recycle this and not recycle this, and you use pictures instead of text, that may improve your recyclability rates. So conducting these walkthroughs really can help you and your team or whoever is involved really identify those wastes that are being generated, where they're being generated, and to really help develop some of those, start generating those ideas for solutions on reduction opportunities. But again, as I said, unless you conduct multiple walkthroughs at different times of day, different times of the year, or just ongoing, you're really only going to capture a snapshot in time of what you see. So it is really important that you look, you take a more holistic approach and do multiple walkthroughs. So then our next step would be to do a waste sort, or like I said, a dumpster dive. And this is really where you physically collect, sort, and weigh a representative sample of your facility's waste streams. This provides a more quantifiable data, such as, you know, weight per waste stream. And then from there, you can develop, you know, what you can determine what the percentage of that waste stream, what that percentage of that waste stream of your facility's overall waste sent out for disposal or landfill. Again, this is something you want to do over multiple time periods. That way, you're collecting those representative samples. But you know, obviously, this method can take longer. And depending on your sampling methodology, you may miss some waste streams, and so they get captured. So again, you want to kind of, if you're going to do this, go down this route, you want to make sure you capture different dates, different times, different products are being generated. That way you can really get that holistic approach or understanding of the waste that you're generating. So one of the tools that we can use as we go through this waste determination assessment audit process is a waste generation log. And this is a simple Excel spreadsheet that I found online, and you can just, or you can create it on your own, and it's basically just, all right, what's being generated, what's the weight, and then what are the, you know, identifying recyclable materials within that waste stream. Or, you know, this may be something that you use if you're doing a waste sort of a particular roll-off dumpster or internal collection site. So, as I said, kind of touched upon, you know, what's the best methodology. For my money, it's really a combination of all three. So, by conducting that waste review or the records review, doing the walkthrough, you're really going to get that complete picture of, again, like I said, the waste streams that you're generating, the volumes, and what are the processes that are generating those wastes. So once we have that information, we'll, you know, what do we do with it now? So one thing I did, and honestly, I'm not even sure where I came up with this idea. I'm sure I found it somewhere. Was I did a waste mapping exercise. So one of my first jobs or projects, when I sort of went full time into the regulatory compliance side of consulting, as opposed to more remedial construction and you know, groundwater sampling, things like that, I got put into a facility that said, whose corporation said, we're going to go zero waste to landfill. And so I was in charge of spearheading this program of how do we get this particular facility to that goal. So the first strategy, or one of the things I did was I did this waste mapping exercise. And what I did, I went super simple. I said, okay, here's my manufacturing process. I said, I identify the materials that are going in, I identify the materials going out. And then from there, I went back and I said, okay, here are the materials going in, here are the waste streams being generated. And I mapped all this out in AutoCAD, color coded and everything, and just kind of kept it simple. From there, I then expanded, okay, So I have my initial inputs. I have our things are going into the process and things coming out. I have, then I look at the waste being generated at each stage of that process and where are those wastes going, or are they generating any secondary waste? And so from there, I created, obviously a more complex looking map. But having this map really allowed me to visualize and allowed anyone else I share this information with, plant management, EHS manager, line workers. It allows me to demonstrate, look at all these inputs and outputs. We've got to be able to find ways to better manage this stuff. So having these maps and this visual tool really illustrates the amount of materials that are being generated. And this was just one process at a facility. All right, so we've gone through our assessment. We've done our mapping exercise. We're on board. We're ready to go. So now what do we do? Well, it's pretty simple, and we've all heard it. Depending on how old we are, we've heard it all of our lives. Reduce, reuse, donate, recycle. But the implementation of these is really where the challenge is. So when we think about waste reduction, you don't have to, and you don't want to start big and grandiose. You want to start low, hit that low hanging fruit, get those easy ones. So reduce paper waste by not printing documents that can be viewed online, or when you just print on both sides. Work with packaging engineers to minimize the type and the volume of the packaging that you need to ship your product. Use reusable transport containers such as plastic totes that can be broken down rather than a single-use cardboard Gaylord box. Purchase things in bulk, again, reducing that packaging waste. Replace single-use items with more durable versions. Work with experts in lean and process engineers to redesign processes so that they are more efficient. I thought it's a little bit more advanced and sort of next level, but that is definitely something that you can do to look at from a more broad inefficiency, labor, time, energy efficiency study. Reuse. Use empty boxes for file storage. Reuse office furniture and supplies as much as possible. Use incoming packaging and containers for outgoing packages. Can a waste be repurposed for another use? We all love our cable spool coffee tables and milk crate storage racks, right? Refurbish wood pallets. Now again, a lot of times this is all market-driven stuff. So you cannot ignore the economics. But these are all things that you can at least evaluate. Donate or exchange items. One man's trash is another man's treasure. So just because you don't have a use for it doesn't mean someone else can't use it. Post materials to websites like Ohio EPA's Material Marketplace, where you can post your unwanted materials and trade it, sell it with other suppliers or other vendors. Donate food waste to local farmers. I know this is a big thing with a lot of our craft brewers here in Ohio. They take a lot of their spent grains, spent hops, and they'll donate it to farmers for feed, or they'll repurpose it into dog treats, things like that. So that's obviously an option. Donate building materials to organizations like Habitat Humanity's Restore. Partner with local schools and nonprofits to donate any office supplies. And then we get into recycling. We touched on it a couple times before. This is typically one of the more difficult things to do or to implement because, again, perception. We think all these things are recyclable, but they're actually not, or that quality of waste may not make it recyclable. So again, think shrink wrap, plastic grocery bags, pizza boxes, things like that. Again, recycling, purely market driven. best intention, and sometimes, you know, if you kind of dig into the recycling world, you'll find out, well, I think I'm recycling, but actually because of the market's really not there, it doesn't get recycled, or not as much to get recycled as you think it does. So before you get into a recycling program, really do some homework, understand what your waste streams are, understand what you have that can be recycled, work with your vendor, work with your consultant, contractor to really have that program sort of locked down, because there is going to be a very large educational component to it as well. All right, so let's talk a little bit about some case studies. The first one is Chipotle. Now, this information is taken from an April 15th Nation Restaurant News article. According to Chipotle's 2020 sustainability report, the company has diverted 51% of its waste through recycling, composting, and waste to energy program. Now, this diversion rate met their goal that was originally established in their 2018 sustainability report. And so because they hit that goal, so you know, basically 2 years earlier, that's allowed them to readjust and recalibrate and set new goals. They also are working on finding new waste for their byproducts, such as turning plastic gloves and garbage bags and dyeing some of their clothing with the avocado pits that would have typically been discarded from their guacamole making. They've also set up composting programs at a number of their facilities, and as I said, they further hope to reduce their waste diversion by about 5% by 2025. Another company we've all heard of is Keurig Dr. Pepper. Again, this was taken from an April 13th fooddive.com article. Keurig Dr. Pepper they agreed to cut their use of virgin plastic packaging by 25% by 2025. If you get into this world, you'll see a lot of 25% by 2025 goals and initiatives. So they used 208 metric tons of packaging in 2018, and in their 2019 CSR report, or corporate social responsibility report, set a goal of using 100% recyclable or compostable packaging and no waste to landfill by 2025. In December 2020, they announced they hit that goal, or hit their goal of making all of their Keurig K-Cup pods 100% recyclable. So again, going back to education, you don't necessarily think about those being recyclable, or maybe you do, but if you have the Keurig cups, you can toss those into the recycle bin. So obviously I can't speak to any of the other brands there. So there's two companies, but then we have the city of Ann Arbor. Some of you may have heard I live in Columbus, so Ann Arbor is not a word that is used very often in Central Ohio. I know, I'm not sure what the demographic is down in Southwest Ohio, but here it's kind of a dirty word. But anyway, so this information taken from Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy website. So the city of Ann Arbor operated a facility, a recycling facility with minimal overhead. It was a converted landfill. So the city took it over to make it into a recycling material recovery campus, is what they call it. It was called the W.R. Wheeler Service Center. So they began composting yard waste, and then the program facility sort of grew and matured. They were able to grow and expand it and take on more materials. And it got to the point where in 2009, they determined that the city really was not going to be able to manage it as effectively as a private sector operator could. It was just getting a little bit too big for them to manage. And Ann Arbor actually is a relatively small city. So in 2011, a company called We Care Organics, which is called now We Care Denali, took over the operation of the facility, and they operate and manage composting facilities throughout the U.S. So they they looked at the market, they said, we can't do this. They brought in a private sector firm to manage it. And by doing so, they've been able to further divert 17% of the city's total waste through composting, which in 2020 equated to 12,000 tons. This has, as I said, allowed the city to then expand and refocus their waste reduction efforts to a carbon neutrality plan, which they called A to Zero. So here we have an example of a city municipal managed program, worked really well, got to the point where it was actually it worked almost too well from an operational functionality standpoint. The city said, we can't do this. So we're going to shift. We're going to bring in a private sector firm who does this. They're the subject matter experts. Let them take it over. And then the city of Ann Arbor is going to go, back to square one a little bit, identify the next issue that they want to tackle, and start focusing attention and resources there. So having these, as I touched on earlier, once you sort of make some gains and you get some traction on these waste reduction programs, and you start eliminating or just become more efficient with your processes, that then gives you the opportunity to say, okay, well, what's our next goal? Maybe it is reducing our air emissions. Maybe it is improving other aspects of our operation. So, all these programs really can kind of build on each other. Two more case studies here. We'll hit on briefly. Time is getting short. Patagonia. So obviously we're probably all familiar with the company Patagonia, outdoor equipment manufacturer, very, we'll say, progressive and aggressive in their marketing strategy towards environmentally beneficial, or at least, manufacturing. So they have made strides to transition away from doing corporate logo or adding corporate logos to their products. What they found was that having, and by eliminating that, it's not like you can't go buy a Patagonia piece of clothing or equipment and then have your company logo stitched on it. But Patagonia itself is not going to do that anymore. They're going to get away from doing that, because what they found was that having a garment for 2 additional years cuts its overall footprint by up to 82%. And so they focus on building high quality, long lasting gear. So if you have, like I have several of their duffel bags. If I have a duffel bag that lasts 25 years, but it could all of a sudden last 27 years, well, hey, that's good. That's good economics for me. That's good economics for them. And so what they found by adding these logos to corporate logos to their equipment, it reduced the lifespan of that piece of equipment, because people change jobs. They don't want to wear their previous company's gear, and they don't really want to give it away. So usually it just ends up in the trash. And so by Patagonia taking that proactive stance of, we're not going to do that, it extends the life of their product, and then reduces their overall impact. And they're very comfortable with you not being on board with those types of activities, and they'll say, well, that's fine, don't buy our stuff. As I said, they're very active and they're very progressive in their marketing of their thoughts and their views, particularly the founder. Like I said, they have no problem saying, if you don't like it, go buy yourself here somewhere else. All right, and then we'll talk briefly about I kind of touched upon it, but my personal experience really got me into the waste reduction aspect of things was, I was embedded at a rubber manufacturer. They didn't manufacture the rubber, but they compounded it and then made it in product. So the first thing we did is tackle those low-hanging fruit, like I said, paper reduction, establishing an office recycling program. I spent a lot of time contacting junk mailers, unsubscribing people, former employees from newsletters and newspapers and magazines, and just eliminating that trash. Then we worked with we established a partnership with one of the largest paper recycling companies in the country to put one of their dumpsters, recycling dumpsters, inside the facility itself, and it was right outside the office. So I tried to make it as easy to promote and recycle paper as possible. We then, as I said, conducted that waste mapping exercise, which I touched on earlier. But then we came to our more difficult waste stream. You know, we were actually ultimately able to boost polyethylene recycling. We worked with production to maximize the amount of reusable rubber compounds to get them reworked into compounds at the facility, or send them back to the manufacturing, the actual rubber manufacturer, and get them to rework it. We also increased our scrap recycling by clearly identifying the roll-offs that were meant for scrap recycling and not just for waste. We then worked with managers and employers by conducting waste walks, and this was, you know, plant management from the top guy at the time to all the operational folks. And we would sit and we would evaluate processes each step of the way as part of that waste mapping process. We'd talk about and we'd look for ways to improve efficiency and make those waste reduction efforts. And you know, the fruits of those efforts, I guess, were that in 7 months we were able to reduce the total waste to landfill by 8%. Non-production waste were reduced by 70%, and disposable costs were reduced by 14% when you looked at the same 7-month time period during the previous year. So by all accounts, it was pretty successful. It's still ongoing out there at that facility itself. All right, last question here. We've talked about this, but we have 3 items here. Which one would you think can be recycled? All right, everyone's got this one right. Well, sorry. Most people got this one right. So the Panera coffee cup sleeve is the only thing on here that can be recycled. Again, food contamination, low quality plastic, things like that all factor into it. So again, anytime you're going to implement a waste reduction, particularly a recycling program, don't forget there is going to very definitely be a significant education component to it. And I forgot to mention the Starbucks cup. It is compostable, but it's not recyclable. So those are 2 different things. All right, I know I am out of time. So here's my contact information. Appreciate you guys having me. Hopefully it was somewhat educational and took some tips away. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. Be happy to talk about anything further we talked about today, or any other EHS regulatory compliance items. So after that, I will stop sharing and turn it back over.
All right, if you have a question, put it in the chat. But I learned a lot. I mean, just stuff, even us here in the office, we could do better. And, you know, definitely things we can do at home in our offices, and then on a bigger scale at the plants. But I thought it was interesting. I learned a lot. Got a lot of food for thought to consider, because I think we take for granted so many things in the world, you know, our infrastructure, our, you know, just our water, our electric, everything. And I think we can't do that anymore. I think it's becoming more and more apparent. So hopefully any questions? I'm not seeing any pop up in there. We do have EPA is going to be speaking next month, and I'm going to send something out to you. And if you have specific questions or topics you want them to cover, I want to get that ahead of time so we make sure we can incorporate that into their presentation. Oh, let's see. Oh, that's Maria was just saying that New York, they tend to be a little more aggressive than a lot of states. They might be making some of the stuff mandatory. But yeah. All right. Well, with that said, we thank you. And if you have his email address too, if you have any other questions. We appreciate your time, and everybody enjoy the rest of your summer. We'll see you in August.
Thanks.
Bye.